Today's daf we're going to be learning is Ketubot daf Samchay. Today's daf is sponsored by Risa and Zev Gewurtz in loving memory of Risa's father, Raphael ben Mordechai, Ralph Lobenberg, Zichrono Lebracha, on his 16th year at site. We're going to get started with, we're going to go back to this Mishna. I'll just refresh your memory. We're in the middle of a Mishna that's discussing a man who is not around seemingly during the week, either for work purposes or for some other reason. He's not living with his wife most of the time. What are his responsibilities when he puts someone, or what are other people's responsibilities when he puts someone else in charge of giving her everything she needs, because he still needs to provide for all the things he needs to provide for her. What does he need to provide for? Remember, at the end of the Mishna, we said this is only for poor people. Wealthier people, it would all be dependent on what their status is. But this is the bare minimum of what the husband needs to provide. We had all discussion in yesterday's daf, at the end of the daf, the confusing part about what is the amount per meal, right? What's the weekly food allowance? How does this correspond to the amount of 2 seudot that's discussed when discussing Erev Tchumen? Put down Erev Tchumen. It doesn't seem to be the same amount. How does it all match up? In the end, we kind of said, well, you know what? She actually gets a little more than exactly 14 meals, right? First of all, Shabbat, there's more meals. Maybe according to some opinions, there's 4 meals and not just 3 meals. And then that would match perfectly one of the numbers. Or we have to add some extra for guests. Okay, and that would work if we hold it's only 3 meals. Well, then she needs some extra for guests. If we want to go with the other opinion, we can add a bunch of extra food for guests. Anyway, those are considered the needs of the woman when it comes to the food. Now we're going to have a whole discussion, and we're going to get off on a bit of an odd, I would say, section in the Gemara about wine. Okay, and the importance of wine. Can a woman, does she get wine? Now, I want you to remember, okay, nowadays, we discuss it, okay, is wine a basic need of a person? Do they get wine? Do they not? Depending on who you are, whether you think wine is, some people have wine every night with dinner, some people have wine every Shabbat, some people don't have wine at all. There's all sorts of ranges. In those days, everybody really drank wine. That was the main drink. On the other hand, we all know the dangers of getting drunk and the concern that and the main concern is going to be if the husband's not around and the wife gets drunk, she might end up sleeping around with somebody. And that's going to be the underlying current of the Gemara. So we're going to start off with no wine for the women. Okay, that's the first line. I'm starting from the second to last line at Samach Dal and Amud Bet. Ve'ilu yayin lo katane. And notice wine is missing in the Mishnah. Why is that? Rabbi Elazar, the Mishnah must support the reading of this opinion of Rabbi Elazar, who says it explicitly. The Mishnah doesn't say it explicitly, but this statement of Rabbi Elazar does. Rabbi Elazar, ein poskim yeno l'isha. Okay, we do not give wine to women. Okay, and he's saying the im tomar. And if you want to disprove my point by saying, look, there's a pasuk in Hosea, and Hosea, he was one of these prophets from Trasar, from the 12 prophets, and there's a whole discussion about comparing the Jewish people and God to a relationship between man and woman. And there it says, right? So there's all these references to relationships. And it says there, Im tomal elcha acharei ma'avai. And if you say, I'm going to go after my beloved, who is my beloved? He's the person who's notne lachmi umemai, gives me bread, he gives me water. Samri upishti, gives me my wool and my linen. Shimni, my oil. Vishikuyai. Shikuyai seems to be a reference to wine. So if you want to tell me, oh, look, it says here the husband provides wine for his wife because she's describing my beloved as someone who provides for me all those things. Well, it's not. Shikuyai is not from the language of wine and like lishtot, but dvarim shaisha mishtokeket alehem. Things that women desire, umaninu tachshitim. It's jewelry. He gives her jewelry. That's what it means. It has nothing to do with wine. So there's my point. Okay, meaning you can't try to disprove me from this pasuk. So that we start off with this understanding, and in a minute we're going to prove it from a pasuk. We're going to have a drasha from a verse that wine should not be given to women, particularly we're going to see later when their husbands are not around because of concern what it might cause. Now the issue, and the assumption is going to be wine causes a woman, I'll say it even more explicitly, to be desirous of having relations with somebody. Okay. And later we'll see, well, if the husband's around, so it'll be the husband. If it's not the husband, it might be somebody else because he's not around. So that's why we want to avoid this when someone else is providing her with food. But we're going to see throughout the rest of the sugya that even though they seem to be against giving the woman wine, we're going to see all sorts of exceptions to the rule, and then we're going to see actual cases where they do give women wine. So we're going to, first of all, the Gemara already kind of sets up that this supports Rabbi Elazar. Maybe there's other opinions, right? Maybe not everybody agrees it doesn't get wine. And again, understanding that wine was their basic drink, it makes a lot of sense. Those who tried to find ways to, yes, give women wine. Okay, there's a little mention of juices, but they didn't really have juices. And it's not even clear they drank water all the time. This whole thing about water is not food. And they must have drunk water, but wine was really their staple. Tarash Rabbi Yehuda ish kfar Neviria. If you want to know what Neviria is, so you can read up in Flashback of Shuli Mishkins, where she talks about the place Neviria near Tzfat and some things about it, and in the context of our daf and understanding a little more in depth. So recommended reading, printed for Shabbat. Va'amrila ish kfar Naful. Some people say he was ish from the city of Naful. So, Nafur Chayil. He said, where do we get it that women should not get given wine? First of all, if you remember, Chana, Eli thought she was drunk because she was davening with her lips moving, and he thought she was drunk. Here again, we're going to see, right? And she, of course, was not drunk. Chana got up after eating bishilo. Ochla means it's feminine. Her eating, she ate. Va'acharei shato, and after drinking. Now, if it wanted to say after she ate and after she drank, it would say acharei ochla, va'acharei shatita, but it says shato. So the language is very strange. To which the Gemara says shato v'lo shatat. It doesn't say shatita. Okay, it should have said shatita, but they say shatat, and therefore it must be she got up after she ate, and others had drunk, but she didn't drink. And from there, you learn that women shouldn't drink. Okay? Now, first of all, she was with her husband. Anyway, we'll get back to that. But first, the Gemara is going to ask some syntactical problem with this. So wait a minute. You're saying if you're taking it very literally, Chateau is he, must have been her husband, El Kana. And Achla is feminine, it must be she ate. So you're going to say she did the eating, he did the drinking, she didn't drink, and he didn't eat, because it says it in feminine. If you're going to take it so literally, then you should say, which is very weird, it doesn't make sense that they sat down to eat and he didn't eat and he only drank. So, right, after all, we're Jewish, right? We always eat. So they say, and then you're going to say, v'lo achal hachinami. You're going to also say that he didn't eat. Well, no, you misunderstood how we got to this drasha. They say, anan mideshane ka b'dibure ka'amrina. What we were pointing out here, okay, comes Rabbi Yehuda ish kfar Neviria, and he says, I was pointing out that there's a switch in the pasuk. Okay, not that achla means only she ate, but the pasuk was speaking specifically about Chana, and it says after she ate, and then mideshane ka b'dibure, the pasuk shifts gears all of a sudden, and instead of talking about her, it talks about in general, right, someone else in the masculine. So because of that, because it started talking about her, and then it moved, it switched. My time is Shane. Why did they switch? In other words, they both ate together, but it was only pointing out her eating. And then when it shifts gears and it starts talking about drinking in general and not her drinking, it must be it's to tell you that she didn't drink. And that's their proof for she didn't drink. And that's the proof women don't get wine given to them because, again, they don't say this explicitly, but it'll be clear from the sugya going forward, is that because her husband's not there, and Rashi even says it on the first Rashi on the daf, Shayayin margila l'ta'avat tashmish. Okay, the assumption is yayin, wine, makes you desirous of having relations. Her husband's not in town, so we want to avoid this situation. So now, the Gemara is going to bring a contradiction. We're going to have two different answers to the contradiction. Meitive, regila notnim la. If she's used to drinking wine, then we give her wine. To which the Gemara says, well, that's not a contradiction. One said, no giving wine, right? Our Mishna didn't mention wine, you don't give wine. This Braita says, if she's used to it, you give her wine. To which the Gemara says, Rigila Shane, we all know that people who are used to drinking wine, and the wine doesn't affect them as much. It's not always dependent on whether you're used to it or not, but the point is, if wine doesn't affect her so much, right, we can't assume just because a woman drinks a glass of wine, that's going to cause her to have relations with somebody, right? That's not exactly a clear correlation. So thankfully, right, the Gemara is cognizant of that and realizes that this isn't it's black and white. So they say that Braita doesn't contradict. The first answer is Rigila Shani. If she's used to wine, it doesn't really affect her, and therefore she can drink, and therefore you have to give her. As he says, and we're going to have a statement that doesn't really make any sense. The Gemara is going to say, that doesn't make any sense. What are you talking about? And then they explain it. So don't worry that you don't understand it right now. Rigila, if she's used to it, notnim la kos echad, she gets 1 cup. She'ena rigila, if she's not used to it, notnim la shnei kosot, she gets 2 cups. That seems to be the exact reverse of what we just said. So it makes no sense, to which the Gemara says, my kamar, what on earth are you talking about? What does that mean, that statement? Amar Abaye, hachi kamar. Abaye now explains Shmuel's statement in the following way. Rigila b'fnei ba'ala shnei kosot, if she's used to drinking together with her husband every night at dinner, they have 2 cups of wine. Shelo b'fnei ba'ala, when he's not there, notnim la kos echad, we reduce it by 1 cup. Eina rigila b'fnei ba'ala ela kos echad, if she's only used to 1 cup of wine with her husband, shelo b'fnei ba'ala notnim la kol ikal. When she's not with her husband, we don't give her anything at all. We basically reduce the amount she normally has when she's with her husband by 1 cup. Okay, so that's what Shmuel said, and that further proves what we just said, that we're going to take that this source that says Rigila Notnimla, that we distinguish between a woman who's used to it and what she's not used to, and basically whatever she's normally used to, we're going to reduce it a little bit, but we can still give her wine. Ibait Ema, second way of resolving the contradiction, Rigila Notnimla Litzikek Dera. Well, we all know that people like to cook with wine. So if she's used to it, maybe the case where she's used to it means that she's used to it because she cooks with it all the time. And they give her wine for this food that was called tzikek tera. Okay, part of it's like something made in a pot. And she basically uses wine for cooking. So yes, when she asks for wine, you can give her wine for cooking purposes. The Amar Rabbi Yavaw, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, as Rabbi Yavaw says in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, Ma'aseh kalato shel Nachimon ben Gurion. There's a case with the daughter-in-law of Nachimon ben Gurion. Okay, this is going to be the same, a similar. 1 second, I just want to check one thing now. I think the next story is Bito shel Nachimon ben Gurion. Just realized. Sorry, 1 second. BT Batna. Yeah, okay. So there's a story with the daughter of Nachimon ben Gurion coming up. This is with the daughter-in-law of Nachimon ben Gurion, but it's an incredibly similar story. Nachimon ben Gurion was a wealthy person. We learned about him other times. I mentioned it a little more. It's mentioned, talk about a little more in Shabbos and stuff. But the daughter-in-law of Nachimon ben Gurion, Paskula Chachamim, so they were very wealthy. So because they were very wealthy, they got more money than the average person. So Paskula, this is talking about, now I want to point out, our sugya, our Mishna, is talking about a woman when her husband's out of town for the week or the month or whatever it might be. And someone else is in charge, and how much food should she get? But it's really the same thing as when her husband is dead and the heirs are supporting her. So there's going to be a ping pong a little bit between, not a ping pong, but a back and forth. Some of the sugyot, many of the stories are not going to be demanding it from whoever is supposed to give them food, but it's really from the children, okay, from the ones who, once the husband's dead. So the Chachamim told her that she should get, but she obviously brought this to court, she should get sa'atayim yayin l'tzikek tera me'erev Shabbat le'erev Shabbat. So here you see, she was allotted a large amount. Sa'atayim is a lot of wine for cooking with, okay, once per week. That was her allotment of wine, and it was specifically for cooking. So you see that wine is used for cooking, and that could be a resolution to the contradiction. But the story continues. Amra lahem, and this is the same thing that's going to appear in the story with the daughter of Nachimon ben Gurion. Kach tifseku libnotechem. You should give this amount to your daughters as well. Now, some people say that what she means is, just like you're giving me a lot of money, I wish for your daughters to be as wealthy as my husband is, and they get as much money also. And in the other story, the rabbis answer Amen. Okay. In this story, they don't say Amen, which the Gemara is going to point out why they didn't say Amen here. Some people read it as she's being sarcastic. And she's saying to them, would you do this to your own? No, we're not sarcastic really, but she's angry at the psak. They think they're giving her a lot of money. And she says, for my wealth, that's nothing. This is like a pittance for me. And she's really criticizing them. And she's basically cursing them and saying, this is what you're going to give to your own daughters. Meaning, right? Number one, it's like, would you do this to your daughters? If it was your daughters, would you give them, again, percentage wise, right? This is not what someone like me is supposed to get. And maybe it's also like a curse. Your daughters will get much less than they deserve. Okay. And then it's a little weird to say why they answer Amen. You could say maybe they answered Amen in the other story. Maybe they answer Amen because what they're saying is that would be good enough for us. Like, we think this is a lot, what we're giving you. Anyway, Chana, the Braita, is going to tell us about this story. Shomeret Yabam Haita velo anu achareha Amen. Why didn't they answer Amen in this story? Because her husband died. She was a Shomeret Yabam. Okay, she was supposed to marry the brother. And if she said to them, such should happen to your daughters, they didn't want to answer Amen because they didn't want their daughters to end up widows. So basically, that's why they didn't say Amen here, because they didn't want their daughters to be like this woman. Have a fate like this woman that her husband died and they had no children. Okay, in any case, this was the second resolution, that possibly we're giving her wine not to drink. Wine to drink she can't get, but wine to cook with. I mean, who's following up on that? What's she doing with the wine is a good question. Unless you say maybe there were different wines that they used for cooking and different wines they used for drinking. Tana, another Braita that talks about, and this is going to be a bit of a disturbing source, but again, you could just say they're being extreme and they don't really mean this literally, which is, I think, the only way to read this. Tana kos echad yafeh li'isha, 1 cup of wine is good for a woman. Shnayim nivulhu, 2, it's already a little despicable. Shlosha tovat bepeh, 3, and this is one of the number of halachot we're going to learn about, since the whole topic here is a woman desiring of having relations with her husband. We're going to learn a bunch of halachot about that come up, and I say halachot a little bit loosely, but halachot about relations, husband and wife having physical relationship, which these halachot are halachot, but again, they're not exactly halachot like kashrut. Okay, they're in different sources. There's different opinions about it. We'll even see some halachot about things today. In any case, shlosha, after she drinks 3 cups, she does something really not good, which is tovat bepeh. She says to her husband, I want to have relations now. And the rabbis view that, again, according to some viewpoints, as not a good thing. A woman shouldn't be so out there and say in words, okay? She can dress or act in a particular way that shows that she's interested, but according to this source, at least, she's trying to, right, she's being open about it in such a way. She shouldn't be that way because, again, they always view women should be more, like the man should initiate more so than the women initiate. Okay, so they didn't like that. Arba'ah, this one's, as I said, this is a little extreme. Afil chamul tovat b'shuk ve'ena makped. Okay, 4, the woman will already be so drunk that she'll go into the shuk and find a donkey and have relations with the donkey and won't even notice that it's a donkey and not a person. Okay, this is obviously very extreme. They're trying to say, don't drink too much wine. Okay, next. Amar Rava. Lo shanu ela she'em ba'ala ima. Wait a minute. This is only if her husband's not around. In other words, she can drink. This is all. The whole discussion was when the husband's not there. If her husband's in town, she can drink wine because what's going to happen? So she'll want to have relations with her husband. That's okay. Even though we just said a minute ago, maybe we don't want her to be so brazen about it and say, I want to have relations right now. But still, right? It's not like she's going to go sleep with somebody else. So Bala ima late lamba. Okay, but if her husband's there, there's no problem at all. To which they ask, and I told you we get back to this. Her husband was there. So what was the issue? Why didn't she drink wine if she was with her husband? So what's the big deal? When you're a guest, it's different. Another halacha number 2 about having relations. Shouldn't have relations when you're a guest in someone else's house. Specifically, we're going to learn it from Chana and Elkanah. It says they got up in the morning, they bowed before God. They go back home to their house. He has relations with her at home, and God remembers them, and she gets pregnant. What do you see? They only have relations here. They didn't have relations when they were on the way. So that must be your proof. Again, these things are not meant to be black and white, okay? But there is a concept of this issue, right? Both of these come from, and whenever we learn halachot of relations between the husband and wife, there's usually concepts that are there. Like there's a concept of tzniut. So the tzniut of the woman, the concept here is, number one, she shouldn't be brazen about it and say explicitly, I want to have relations. Number two, right, they shouldn't do it in someone else's house. It's not the most sanua thing, right? Someone might hear having relations. Depends on what kind of guest house you have. Okay, it depends on the situation. Chuma, and we're going to have a really, really odd story. Okay, so be prepared. Chuma, who was Debitu da Abaye, she was the wife of Abaye. Okay, so before we get into the story, because we're going to see the punchline of the story, I want to tell you something about this. It came up in a different sugya. If you recall, we've had machlokot before about what is chazaka. Is chazaka created in 2 times or chazaka created in 3 times? Normally we talk about chazaka, we say 3 times. However, there's a machloket throughout all the sugyas about chazaka. Is it twice or 3 times? Again, what is a chazaka? In case you don't know, it means that once you do something twice or 3 times, depending on the opinion you hold by, we assume that it will happen continuously. So if there's a woman who married a man, he died, she married another man, he died, there's already a debate about whether she can get married a 3rd time. Is she called an isha katlanit, a woman who kills her husbands, or do we wait for 3 times? So Abaye is quoted as saying, I think we hold by the opinion that it's 3 and not 2, even though many people who hold 3 specifically in that case do hold 2. But if you remember, it came up also in the Brit Milah of 2 kids who died from circumcision. Does the 3rd child need a Brit Milah or not? When we're talking about dinei nefashot, often we're much, when it comes to life and death, we're much more strict. Abaye said, I think it's 3, and he marries this woman who is an isha who already killed 2 husbands. Okay, again, she didn't kill 2 husbands. Okay, let's be clear. But they call her an isha katlanit. What it means is 2 of her husbands died. Okay, and she's been widowed twice. So there's a concern that she might be widowed 3 times, and therefore you shouldn't marry her. But Abaye says, no. We can hold 3 times only as a problem. Twice is okay, and he marries her. So that's going to help you when we get to the punchline of this story. So she's now married to Abaye, but he dies. Okay, so now she's really considered katlanit according to halacha. She comes before Rava to get her stuff, right? What she's deserving of from the heirs. She says, give me my food. Pasaklai says, okay, this and this amount of food is what you're deserving. Psokli chambra, she says, give me wine. He says, I know Nachmani. He was my friend Abaye. I know that's what they call him because his father was Nachmani. I know he didn't drink wine. He wasn't a wine drinker. So you can't tell me that you were used to drinking wine. It's interesting to think, right? If he didn't drink wine, then she didn't drink wine. She said, I swear in your name, on your life, we would drink wine together. He would pour wine in cups this big, and she shows her arm, and she shows how big the cups were. There was the length of her arm, okay? Maybe half her arm, like an amma. Anyway, she shows him with her arm, using her arm. As she was showing him, picking up her arm, what happened? Her shirt or whatever she was wearing, kind of slid up. Her arm was revealed. Nafal nehora bebeidina, this big light comes down into the court, meaning her beauty was so apparent that, it kind of took him away. Okay, it got him, whoa. So what does he do? Kam Rava al lebeti. He goes straight home to his wife. Teva'at lebat Rav Chisda. Bat Rav Chisda, it was his wife. Okay, the daughter of Rav Chisda. He goes to the daughter of Rav Chisda. Right, often the women don't have first names here. Okay, or we don't hear their first names. Anyway, her yichus we get at least. It wasn't like he just goes home to his wife, but we get her yichus. Okay, interesting that we do get Chuma, her name, okay, which is a very strange name. Anyway, he goes and he says, I want to have relations right now. Right, we just said the woman's not supposed to do this. He does this. Maybe we're going to see it's not so good when he does it either, because let's see what happens. Amrle bat Rav Chisda, man havi ha'ina bebeidina. Who is in the court today? What's going on? I don't understand your behavior. Amrla Chuma debitu da Abaye. She says, Chuma, the wife of Abaye. Nafka abatra, the daughter of Rav Chisda, gets very angry. She runs out of the house. She goes to find Chuma. she finds her. Machtala bekulfe deshida. Okay, I don't know the meaning of why she does specifically with this, but she hits her with the lock of a box, like a trunk. Until she chases her out of the entire city of Mechosa. And she says to her the following, and this is why I said to understand the punchline, you have to get the background. Katat lech tzlata, you killed 3, and now you want to kill another one. In other words, why are you going after my husband? You crazy, widow who's already widowed 3 people, and now you're gonna, you've already caused the your husband, as you've been widowed 3 times. Now you want to do it a 4th time. Why are you going after my husband? And stay far away. Now, interesting, right? Was she at fault? Doesn't seem like she was at fault, right? And the daughter of Rav Chisda took it very seriously, and kicks her out of town. What to make of this story is a really good question. First of all, number one, you see that a man, coming home from work and saying, right now I want to have relations is not maybe the smartest thing to do. That's number one. After we just said she shouldn't be so brazen about it, he maybe also shouldn't be so brazen about it. And, at least like he didn't do anything with her and it wasn't really her wish. Anyway, it's a very interesting story. Not sure what to make of it. Okay, next story. The Bitu de Rav Yosef, Bered Rava, Ante Lekamed Rav Nechemia Bered Rav Yosef. If you remember, Rav Yosef, the son of Rava, was the one who went away for 6 years, and then he came back after 3, and Rava got all upset with him. What, are you coming back looking for your mistress wife? So maybe this is the same wife, okay? The wife of Rav Yosef, it's not really so important whether it is or not. We just mentioned him, so I thought it was important to connect these. But she comes before Rav Nechemia, the son of Rav Yosef, which sounds like it was probably a son from a different marriage that he had. So she goes to his son and she says, give me mizonot. Or it could be, by the way, this is the son of the other Rav Yosef. It's possible because there's 2 Rav Yosefs. Remember, there was the 3rd generation and the 5th generation. So anyway, she says, I'm deserving mizonot, pasakle. He rules for her, yes. Psokli chamra, I want wine, pasakla. I just want you to notice all these stories, the woman wants wine and she gets wine. Okay, so even though we said in the beginning she doesn't get wine, we see all these stories where they do give the woman wine. Amalei, he says, why am I giving you wine? Here he's being explicit about it. I know it's very common in the city of Mechosa that they drink wine. Another story with the wife of a different Rav Yosef, the son of Rav Menashe from the city of Dvil. Rav Yosef comes before Rav Yosef. Amarle psokli mizone, pasakla, psokli chamra, pasakla. Again, same thing. I want mizona, she gets it. I want wine, she gets it. Then she says, and here the issue isn't going to be the wine. Already we've moved on past that. We get that there are certain circumstances where women get wine. Psokli shirai, give me clothes, nice clothing, nice silk clothing. Amarli, shirai lama, what do you need fancy clothing for? You're not married anymore. Amarle, lecha ulechaberach ulechavruach. For you, your friends, and your friends' friends. In other words, I don't want to walk around like a disheveled widow. I want people to have respect for me. I need to walk around with proper clothing. So please give me proper clothing. No, okay, that's the end of that, which we see. That's just an added thing that we see that she could be deserving also of nice clothing to be able to maintain a certain amount of, keep her respect within the community. Next thing in the Mishnah, so a bed and 2 kinds of mats, a hard and a soft and a hard. Mapatz is the soft, the machzelet is the hard. What does she need the mats for if she has a bed? Right? The mats are to sleep on. The bed is a bed. What do you need mats for? So they say, there were some beds, we learned about these before, where they were made of ropes. It was like a weaving, the warp of the woof. So same thing, they would put the ropes, tie them this way, tie them that way, and you don't want to sleep on ropes. That's super uncomfortable. You're going to end up with, indentations in your back. So the mivagirla, okay, because of that, it would bother her. Some people say it would make her old, like bogeret. It would make her old, and therefore she would end up, by sleeping that way, it would make her body, she would have back pains, maybe things like that. Or you can explain it in a different way. Anyway, the point is she needs, and then you could either say, then she just needs 1 mat, not 2 mats, but maybe she needs a hard mat to basically not feel the ropes and a soft mat to make the bed more comfortable. I was thinking, when you go buy a mattress, you like hard, soft, and there's different, right? This is really hard. This isn't hard like our hard mattresses, right? The hard mat would be really hard. So you would need that. And the soft, some people say really just is one or the other. You don't need both. Tanu Rabbanit. They don't give her pillows or cushions. She gets pillows and cushions. We're going to have another strange sugi here. And I want you to remember that some of these halachot, okay, I have to sometimes prepare you before we read something so that you don't think this is the way things went in general, but some halachot are instituted to protect a woman from a possibly vindictive or difficult husband. In this case, it's not going to be vindictive, but it is going to be a bit of a difficult husband. So, or not the kind of husband that you would ideally want to be with. So we have this machloket, whether she gets pillows or cushions. So to which the Gemara asks, Hechidami, what's the case? Ida orcha, if she normally sleeps with pillows and cushions, my Tanakama, why wouldn't Tanakama say she gets that? In other words, remember we said, hakol lefi chodo or choda. In other words, it all is a matter of what she's used to. So if she normally has pillows and cushions, then she should get. And ilavd orcha, if she normally doesn't sleep with pillows and cushions, then my Rabbanit. Why would Rabbanit say he has to give her pillows and cushions? She doesn't sleep that way, so she shouldn't be getting it. So lotzricha kigon to orche dide v'lav orcha dida. Now this is different from what we said about before. Olaimo, she goes up to his status. Here, shouldn't sleep with a pillow, so it doesn't matter. It's not like a status thing that, since he sleeps with a pillow, she should get a pillow. But the case is like this. He normally sleeps with a pillow and she doesn't. Now, Tanakama Savar, now we have to explain the machlok. Tanakama holds, Amarla, he says to her, Kia Zilna, Shakilna Lu. Remember our case. He's away during the week. He says, when I leave, I take my pillow with me. Some of the commentaries say there's a lot of lack of clarity exactly what's going on here. What's the reality of the situation? They try to explain that what happens is he doesn't want to leave. It's not that he wants his pillow and cushions with him there. Maybe that might be the best explanation. He wants pillows and cushions there. But some of the commentaries say he doesn't want to leave his pillows and cushions here because she's worried she might sleep with them. And if she sleeps with them, she'll use them. They'll be wear and tear. And he doesn't want wear and tear, right? He used them once a week. She uses them 6 days a week, right? That would be severe wear and tear. So he doesn't leave them there. He takes them with him. And then, Kiatina, Maitina Luba Adai. Tanakama says she doesn't get pillows and cushions because why? She doesn't need them for herself. And she doesn't need them for him when he returns because he takes them with him and he brings them back. Every week he goes, he's got his satchel with his pillows and his cushions in it. He takes them to work. He brings them back home. And that's why she doesn't need pillows and cushions. But get ready for this one. Rabbi Natan Saval. Amrale, she can say to him, I want pillows and cushions. Why? Because I'm worried what's going to happen. This is like the warrior wife. She says, Zimnin Dimitrami Banish Mashot. It might be 1 week. You'll come home, right? People who work on Friday know this. You get stuck in traffic on the way home, or you'll be busy at work. You'll get distracted. You'll show up once Shabbat has already started. What will happen? You won't be able to carry your bag with you because you can't carry on Shabbat. You'll still be able to walk home from wherever you got to, but I'm assuming you're within Tchum Shabbat, but you'll have to walk home empty-handed. You'll get home. There'll be no pillows and cushions. What's going to happen? Lo matzik ma'ite lahu, right? You won't be able to bring them. V'shakalu lididi umagna li al ara. You're going to take my mats because you don't have a pillow. You're going to use that as your mat, and you're going to basically stick me on the floor. And I don't want that. So basically provide me with a pillow and cushion so that I have a spare so that when you show up without yours, you won't go taking me and knocking me out of bed. Very strange to think the husband would do this. I would hope that your husband wouldn't do this to you, or if you're a husband, I would hope you wouldn't do it to your wife. But again, the halacha needs to be supportive, right? She can also, does she have a claim? She can make a claim that I'm worried you might do this to me, and therefore she gets provided with a pillow and cushion. Remember also it's a debate whether she does or not. This is the side that she does. Okay, noten la kippah. Again, we're going to quote parts of the Mishna where we're really quoting the rest of it, which is the next part, which is she gets clothing once a year and she gets shoes on the holidays, which we explained maybe is 2 times a year, maybe it means 3 times a year. The Gemara is going to clearly think it means 3 times a year at Pesach, Shavuot, and Sukkot. Even though I do still think that my reading of the Mishna is possible, that when it says holidays, it means holiday season, once Pesach time, once Sukkot time. Anyway, I'm a of Papa Abaye. Turning now to Amabet, Hi Tana, Shliach Artilai, the Rami Misane. I don't understand. What? Someone's going to walk around without clothes, just wearing shoes? Like shoes are more important than clothes. She gets clothes once a year. She gets shoes 3 times a year. Amarle, Tana bimkom harim. The Tana, and this is a very important line. The Tana lived in a place that was a mountainous region. And therefore, in a mountainous region, you need 3 pairs of shoes a year because the shoes get worn out very easily because of the rocky terrain. And as they were telling you this, they also want to teach you something else, which is number 1, you need 3 pairs of shoes a year, but give it to her on the holiday so that she has simcha on the holiday. And she'll be happy getting her new shoes. And it's altogether, you need to give her 3 pairs of shoes. You could split it, every third of the year, give her a pair, but it doesn't really matter when you give it to her. So therefore, give it to her on the chagim, so she'll be happy to have new shoes. Why do I say this is very important? Because what it's saying is, the Mishna was written by somebody who was living in a particular time in a particular place. And that influenced what he wrote, la halacha, which again shows it's similar to the wine thing, right? Depends on where you live and what your custom is, whether you drink wine, whether you used to, whether you're not, whether you get drunk from it, whether you don't get drunk from it, what it makes you do. All these things are very fluid. So on the one hand, the Mishna gives all these criteria, even the whole discussion about the meals, what one person eats for a meal might be different than what someone else eats for a meal. So their comparison of Erev Tchumin to this, right? It could be whoever wrote this Mishnah, that was what their typical meal included, but maybe someone else would eat a meal that's a different amount. So this is, even though it's a very clear halacha and there's all these rules, it's very fluid because it really depends on the custom. Part of Shuli's article is also about, different places, also this concept of different minhagim develop in different areas. The kelim shel 50 zuz. Now they say, wait, something's wrong with this Mishnah. You get clothes, a clothing stipend of 50 zuz. That's a lot of money. Amar Abaye, 50 zuze pshite. Remember, Abaye didn't have a lot of money also. So it's interesting that he's the one saying this. When we say zuzim, we don't mean the zuzim that we're always talking about, which is a dinar, which is the 200 zuz in the Ketubot, which is a lot of money. No, we're talking about a different type of currency called a zuz, a different type of coin called a zuz, the simple zuzim, which are worth a lot less money. Mimai, how does he know this? It says, what case is this referring to? To a poor person. But if you're a wealthy person, then it all goes according to your status. If you're saying 50 zuz, no poor person, this mission was for poor people. Poor people don't have a wardrobe worth 50 zuz a year. And then where are they going to get 50 zuz from? So they basically reinterpret and say there's no way they meant 50 zuz. It must be some other currency. That's also called a zuz. Tanu Rabbanit. Now they want to know motar mizono labal, motar b'lo lisha. What happens with, he's supposed to give her food and he's supposed to give her clothes. Let's say there's extra. What happens to the extra clothes? So the extra food goes to the husband. She didn't eat all the food, he gets it back. Motar b'lo, but the leftover clothes that get ruined, right? The dregs of the clothes go to the woman. So motar b'lo lisha lama. What's she going to do with them? What are you going to do with old, worn out clothes? Also very interesting line. Again, you get sort of insights into some things in their society. She uses the worn out clothes. It's a little bit of a confusing sentence. She uses the worn out clothes when she's in nida so that she keeps her good clothes for when she's not in nida and can be with her husband, because we want her to look beautiful when she's in the time of the month where she could be with her husband. So therefore, she doesn't want to waste her good clothes and have them wear away if she wears them all month. So in the nida weeks, she's going to basically wear her old clothes. It look gross because what's the difference? And her nicer clothing she'll save for the days when she's not in nida. Amar Abaye. Abaye says we can infer naktina motar b'lo manali yorshav. So if it's a widow and she doesn't have a husband to need to beautify herself for, then all the extras, the worn out clothing goes to the heirs. We don't want her to be looking not nice in front of him. But now we don't really care because she's a widow. You might say, what do you mean we care? We already had that sugya just before that said I need nice clothes because I need to look presentable in front of people. So, but it could be that in the heirs' best interest, right? They don't really care if she gets remarried. On the one hand, though, it does free them up of their responsibility to her. So it is in their best interest. On the other hand, it's not like we should be using the husband's money to enable her to get married to somebody else. Okay, this again, it's not this line, it's for the next line, which is And then it says she eats with him. Remember, he put someone else in charge, but she eats with him Friday nights. So my ochelet, we already saw that there was a machloket about this. Now we're going to see it inside. There was a reference to it in yesterday's daf. Rav Nachman Amar ochelet mamash. She literally means she eats with him Friday nights. Rav Ashi Amar tashmish. It means she sleeps with her, as we saw before. That right? Already we know that Friday night is the night. It's non ochelet imo leilei Shabbat. So wait, but look at the wording in the Mishna. It says she eats with him Friday nights. It makes more sense if you're saying eat. That's why it says she eats, which is eating. If you're going to say it was relations, why would you use the word ochelet? She eats. It's not the word you use when you talk about relations. They say, it's a euphemism. And in fact, we have a pasuk that uses the word achila as a euphemism for relations. The beginning of the pasuk is really critical, and they don't quote it. It's a pasuk in Mishle, the 30th chapter. Derech isha mina efet. This is a woman who is an adulterous wife. Achla umachata pia. She eats and then wipes her mouth clean. Va'amra lo pa'alti avin, and says, I didn't do anything. So here you see they use that language to talk about relations. Meitive. But here's a contradiction from a bright. Rashbag omer ochelet b'leilei Shabbat v'Shabbat. Rashbag says, and here we're going to get our third halacha about relations, things that are allowed or not allowed. So she eats b'leilei Shabbat and on Shabbat, meaning Shabbat and Friday night and Shabbat day, which sounds like night, dinner, and lunch in the afternoon or in the morning. And Shabbat as well. But you don't have relations on Shabbat afternoon. How do we know this? Because Rav Huna said, Jewish people are holy people. They don't have relations during the day. Again, connected with this idea of tzniut. During the day, it's light. It's not appropriate. So to which they say, and I told you before, that there's all sorts of different opinions about a lot of things relating to tashmish, what's allowed, what's not. And can't say that's a contradiction. Rava says in a dark house, you can, meaning close the shades, block the light coming in, and then it's not a problem. You can have relations during the day. So you see, it could mean having relations, and it could be even on Shabbat, you're allowed to because of Rav. Now it said, if she's nursing, you give her more food. Now we understood why to give her more food, because she's feeding too, right? She's nursing. Usually it drains your body of more food, you need more nutrients when you're nursing. But the Gemara is going to go a bit of in a different direction, and then in the end, come back to that. Darish Rabbi Ula Rabba Apitcha de Benesiah. He had this trasha in the doorway of the Beit HaNasi. We already learned this, even though you don't have to sustain your children when they're young. But very young children, you do have to pay for their food. Remember, the father doesn't have to pay for the food for his kids when he's alive, right? Only when he dies, she gets it because of the ketubah. But, right, it's a stipulation in the ketubah. But young children, yes. Ad kama, to what age? Ad ben shesh. Till the age of 6. Kid Ravasi, dam Ravasi, katan ben shesh yotze be'eruvimo. Rav Asi says that when it comes to, we're back to this Erev Tchumin, the space that a woman can walk on Shabbat, any child under 6 goes with her. This, by the way, is the basis for child custody laws. We talked about this last time we discussed this, which is under 6, according to halacha, the child is always given to the mother, or much more likely, unless there's a real reason not to. Above age 6 is much more complicated, and they're more likely actually to give to the father, even though, right, many other civil law wouldn't necessarily say that. Jewish law, the sources seem to indicate more the father. In any case, under age 6, he goes with the mother, and therefore, just like he has to give the mother mizonot, he has to give the child mizonot, because she's like an extension of the mother, and the mother, he is obligated to give her food. To which they say, Mimai, where can you infer this from? From our Mishna, she has to work less, but mosifin la al mizonotea. Why do they add more food? Must be because she has to feed her child as well. My time, is it not because she's eating with her child, no manika is until age 6, but they try to maybe do this. You can also question it from there. Anyway, they're going to reject it. Otherwise, they're going to say, no, maybe because she's sick, right? She's weaker. Should have said then if she's sick. So why does it say if she's nursing? Most nursing women are sick. Again, they're not considered really sick, but they're weaker. They need more food. Eat Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi, Mosifim Layayin. Another thing, by the way, to end the wine sugya, specifically they give her extra wine as well. In this case, Shayayin Yafel Chalav, because wine is good for the child, it's good for the milk. Going back to all those sugyas about what's good for nursing mothers to eat. And with that, Hadran Alach Afal Pi. Start the next Mishnah. Mitziat Eisha Masei Yadea LaBaala. Most of this Mishnah is a repeat. Things that a woman finds on the street, go to her husband. Even though we're going to see the next thing we'll start tomorrow is there's a machloket about this. Not so clear. Maybe she could keep it herself. Masei Yadea, salary to her husband. Yerushata, she inherits something from her father. Hu achel perotea b'chaya, while she's still alive. He doesn't get the property itself, but he works on the property and gets to get all the proceeds. Boshta upkama shela. Okay, we'll talk about this more in tomorrow's daf. If she is if she gets injured and there's humiliation and also damages, they go to her. Rabbi Yehuda ben Betera disagrees. If she was damaged in a private place in her body, she gets 2/3, he gets 1/3, because it also affects him. If it's noticeable, and that's much more embarrassing for the husband because his wife is walking around, and we'll discuss this whole thing in tomorrow's daf. He gets 2/3 and she only gets 1/3. He gets his immediately. With her, we buy land from it, and then he gets the proceeds because, again, all of her land goes to him. By the way, this in American law was customary until the late 1800s. This whole thing about women not being able to be lawyers because they had no rights to their land because their land was their husband's land. So if it sounds crazy to you, it was customary in many places in the world until really very recently. If you're talking, very recent, 1800s is very recent compared to the Gemara. Okay, last thing for today, my kamashmalan tanina. We already learned this in the Mishnah on Daf Mem Vav Amabet. The father has the rights to all the kesef of the kiddushin and the shtar and the bi'ah. He gets anything she lost items, her salary. He can annul her vows. He can accept her get. But he doesn't get the rivachim, the proceeds in her lifetime. Niseit, if she gets married. Yeter, the Baal gets even more than the father. So that's basically saying the same thing that our Mishna says. To which they answer, the reason our Mishna said it is they wanted to add this issue of the Boshan and the Pgam. That wasn't mentioned in that Mishna because that Mishna was talking about the father and then just added the son, the husband as well. This one wants to focus on the husband, and therefore it added this other machloket that wasn't mentioned in that Mishnah. And that's why, to get to that, it kind of wanted to give you the background, even though it's a repeat of a Mishnah we already saw. With that, we'll end today's daf. Wishing everyone a Shabbat Shalom.